My friend's dad is a war photographer, but with a twist. He goes into battlefields after the shooting stopped and takes pictures of the aftermath. The newspaper he works for got him a contract to take photos in Iraq. Well, this was just after the war broke out, and he couldn't just fly into the country, not while there was a war, so he flew into Turkey and stayed in a town close to the border called Zor Bir Yer, which translates to a hard place. There, he hired a translator that spoke English, Turkish, and Arabic, rented a truck, and at the crack of dawn, the pair set out for the border. Well, about halfway there, the truck broke down. The translator called a towing service that was back in the village. After he talked to the person on the other end for a while, he hung up, looked at my friend's dad, and said, "The tow truck is being refueled, so they won't be here for about 2 hours." To which my friend's dad replied, "Great. So until then, we're stuck between Iraq and a hard place." An older couple was lying in bed one night. The husband was falling asleep, but the wife was in a romantic mood and wanted to talk. She said, "You used to hold my hand when we were courting." Wearily, he reached across, held her hand for a second, and tried to get back to sleep. A few moments later, she said, "Then you used to kiss me?" Mildly irritated, he reached across, gave her a peck on the cheek, and settled down to sleep. 30 seconds later, she said, "Then you used to bite my neck." Angrily, he threw back the bedclothes and got out of bed. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To get my teeth." A man walks into his favorite upscale restaurant and settles into his usual spot. As he scans the room, his eyes catch a stunning woman dining alone nearby. Feeling bold, he calls the waiter over and orders the finest bottle of Merlot to be sent her way, hoping to catch her attention. The waiter delivers the bottle and explains it's a gift from the gentleman across the room. The woman glances over, gives a polite smile, and then scribbles a note, handing it back to the waiter to deliver. The note reads, "For me to accept this gift, you must have a Mercedes in your garage, $1 million in the bank, and at least 7 inches in your pants." Amused, the man jots down a reply and sends it back. His note reads, "Sweetheart, I have a LaFerrari, a BMW i8, and a Mercedes-AMG GTS parked in my garage. My bank account holds more than $20 million, but cutting off 3 inches just to impress you? Sorry, not happening. Kindly return the wine." A police officer pulled over a car for speeding and approached the driver's side window. Officer: "Sir, may I see your driver's license?" Driver: "I don't have one. Got suspended after my 5th DUI. The officer narrowed his eyes. Not good. Officer: "All right, can I see the registration for this vehicle?" Driver: "Not my car, I stole it." The officer stiffened. This just got worse. Officer: "You're telling me this car is stolen?" Driver: "Yep. But now that you mention it, I think I saw the owner's registration in the glove box right next to my gun." Officer: "There's a gun in the glove box?" Driver: "Yes, sir. That's where I put it after I shot the woman who owns this car and stuffed her in the trunk." The officer backed away slowly and immediately called for backup. Within minutes, multiple squad cars arrived, lights flashing. The captain himself stepped out, approaching cautiously. Captain: "Sir, may I see your license?" The driver shrugged and handed it over. It was valid. Captain: "And this car? Who does it belong to?" Driver: "Me, of course. Here's the registration." The captain examined the papers. Everything checked out. Captain: "Would you mind opening the glove box? We were told there's a gun in there." Driver: "Sure, but there's no gun." The officer opened the glove box. Empty. Captain: "All right. Now, can you pop the trunk?" The driver complied. The trunk swung open, completely empty. No sign of a body. The captain turned to his officer, arms crossed. "I don't get it. This officer said you told him you didn't have a license, stole the car, and had a gun in the glove box and a body in the trunk." The driver shook his head and smirked. Driver: "Yeah, and I bet the liar told you I was speeding too." My buddy was getting a hand job from his new girlfriend when he asked, "How are you so good at this?" "Years of practice," she said. "Bit of a player in your day, were you?" "No," she replied. "I used to have one of my own." A young man was lost wandering in a forest when he came upon a small house. He knocked on the door and was greeted by an ancient Chinese man with a long gray beard. "I'm lost," said the man. "Can you put me up for the night?" "Certainly," the Chinese man said, "but on one condition. If you so much as lay a finger on my daughter, I will inflict upon you the 3 worst Chinese tortures known to man." "Okay," said the man, thinking that the daughter must be pretty old as well, and entered the house. Before dinner, the daughter came down the stairs. She was young, beautiful, and had a fantastic figure. She was obviously attracted to the young man since she couldn't keep her eyes off him during the meal. Remembering the old man's warning, he ignored her and went up to bed alone. But during the night, he could bear it no longer and sneaked into her room for a night of passion. He was careful to keep everything quiet so the old man wouldn't hear. Near dawn, he crept back to his room, exhausted but happy. He woke to feel a pressure on his chest. Opening his eyes, he saw a large rock on his chest with a note on it that read, "Chinese Torture 1. Large rock on chest." "Well, that's pretty crappy," he thought. "If that's the best the old man can do, then I don't have much to worry about." He picked the boulder up, walked over to the window, and threw the boulder out. As he did so, he noticed another note on it that read, "Chinese Torture 2. Rock tied to left testicle." In a panic, he glanced down and saw the rope that was already getting close to the end. Figuring that a few broken bones was better than castration, he jumped out of the window after the boulder. As he plummeted downward, he saw a large sign on the ground that read, "Chinese Torture 3. Right testicle tied to bedpost." It was a normal day at the local sperm bank when, all of a sudden, a man bursts in with a mask and a handgun and yells, "Everyone on the ground!" Once every person in the facility is lying down, he walks over to the refrigerator area for donations, then turns around, facing the main area again. He points his gun at one of the nurses and shouts, "You, come over here and open this door." She walks over, trembling profusely, and keys in the number on the door. The gunman says, "All right, grab a tray of the most recent donations and bring them to the nearest desk." After the panicking nurse does so, he makes one further demand. "Drink up." Excuse me? These are today's donations, right? Well, open up one of the tubes and drink it." Still shaking, she takes off the lid of the tube and pours it down her throat. Again. She slowly opens another one and repeats the action, shivering. A third time, "Don't hesitate." The nurse hurriedly does it again. The gunman takes off his mask and says, "See, honey? It's not that hard now, is it?" A terribly overweight blonde woman goes to her doctor about her weight, so her doctor puts her on a diet. "I want you to eat vegetables and grains for 2 days, then skip a day and repeat this procedure for 2 weeks, and the next time I see you, you should have lost at least 5 pounds. When the blonde returned, the doctor was shocked to find she had lost nearly 20 pounds. "Why, that's amazing," the doctor said. "Did you follow my instructions?" The blonde nodded and said, "I have to tell you, though, I thought I was going to drop dead after the 3rd day." "From hunger, you mean?" "No, from skipping." Paddy is watching his first game of golf. The player's first shot lands in the rough, and Paddy is quite impressed when he manages to get back onto the fairway. However, the next shot lands in a bunker. But Paddy is even more impressed when the player chips out and onto the green. Then when the player sinks his putt, Paddy starts laughing and says, "I can't wait to see if he can get the ball out of there." A lady is visiting the zoo, and she comes to the chimpanzee enclosure. She throws a chimp a peanut and is horrified when it sticks it where the sun doesn't shine and then, removing it, eats it. She throws a few more nuts and it does exactly the same thing. She storms up to the keeper to complain that a chimp with such bad habits shouldn't be allowed in public. The keeper says, "Ma'am, that is one very clever chimp, that is." To which she replies, "I don't see how you could consider—" Dave wanted a job as a signalman on the railways and was really excited when told to meet the inspector at the signal box for an interview. The inspector asks, "What would you do if you realized that two trains were heading for each other on the same track?" Dave says, "I would switch the points for one of the trains." "What if the lever broke?" asked the inspector. A young reporter went to a retirement home to interview an aged but legendary explorer. The reporter asked the old man to tell him the most frightening experience he had ever had. The old explorer said, "Once I was in the jungles of India. I was on a narrow path, and my faithful native gun-bearer was behind me. Suddenly, the largest tiger I have ever seen leaped onto the path in front of us. I turned to get my weapon only to find the native had fled. The tiger leaped toward me with a mighty roar. I just soiled myself." The reporter said, "Under those circumstances, anyone would have done the same." The old explorer said, "No, not back then. Just now when I went, roar." The census taker stood at the door, clipboard ready. "Sir, are you married or happy?" he asked George. George froze. His brain stalled like an old lawnmower. Well, I'm married and I'm—" From upstairs, Martha's voice thundered, "Careful how you answer that!" George panicked, stepped back, and tumbled down the stairs in slow motion. Flat on the floor, he groaned. "Married!" The census taker raised an eyebrow. "Should I write married, but not happy?" Martha appeared at the top of the stairs, arms crossed like a drill sergeant. "You better write married and happy, or I'll make sure he falls again." George sighed. "Put down married, happy, and slightly bruised." The census taker jotted a note. "Status, married beyond repair." One evening, a man and a woman happened to sit next to each other at a busy bar. After chatting for a while, they discovered they were both doctors. The conversation flowed, the jokes got funnier, and after about an hour the man laughed and said, "Hey, since we're both off duty tonight, how about a friendly challenge? Let's each show our best quick response medical skill. No pressure, just for fun." The woman grinned. "You're on." They headed back to her place, where she had plenty of supplies. The man wandered into the living room to wait while she went into the bathroom. He heard the sink running, and running, and running. 10 minutes later, she walked out wearing gloves, completely scrubbed up like she was stepping into surgery. They performed a little mock emergency drill, bandaging, checking vitals, the whole fun practice routine. When they finished, the man raised an eyebrow. "You're a surgeon, aren't you?" he asked. She blinked in surprise. "Yeah, how did you guess?" "Easy," he said. "You scrubbed up longer than I wash my car." She laughed. "Fair enough. And you're an anesthesiologist, aren't you?" The man looked impressed. "How on earth did you figure that out?" She smiled and said, "Because during the whole drill, I didn't feel a thing." The day. My husband made a pharmacist. Regret his career. My husband walked into a pharmacy and asked to speak with the pharmacist on duty. As he waited, he took out a small brown bottle and a teaspoon, placing them carefully on the counter. The pharmacist walked over, smiled, and asked if he could help. My husband said, "Yes. Could you please taste this for me?" Since my husband was obviously older and with several customers now watching, the pharmacist reluctantly agreed. He took the spoon, dipped a small amount of the liquid, tasted it, and swished it around. Immediately, his face twisted in disgust. He spat it onto the floor and started coughing uncontrollably. When he finally finished, my husband looked him straight in the eye and asked, "Now, does it taste sweet to you?" Still gagging and shaking his head, the pharmacist shouted, "No, not at all." My husband sighed in relief and said, "Oh, thank goodness. My doctor told me to have a pharmacist test my urine for sugar." Ma and Pa were two old hillbillies living out on a farm up in the hills. Pa has found out that the hole under the outhouse is full. He goes into the house and tells Ma that he doesn't know what to do to empty the hole. Ma says, "Why don't you go ask the young'un down the road? He must be smart because he's a college graduate." So Pa drives down to the neighbor's house and asks him, "Mr. College Graduate, my outhouse hole is full and I don't know what to do to empty it." The young'un tells him, "Get yourself 2 sticks of dynamite, one with a short fuse and one with a long fuse. Put them both under the outhouse and light them both at the same time. The first one will go off and shoot the outhouse in the air. While it's in the air, the second one will then go off and spread the poop all across your farm, fertilizing your ground. The outhouse should then come back down to the same spot atop the now empty hole." Pa thanks the neighbor, then drives to the hardware store and picks up 2 sticks of dynamite, one with a short fuse and one with a long fuse. He goes home and puts them under the outhouse. He then lights them and runs behind a tree. All of a sudden, Ma comes running out of the house and into the outhouse. Off goes the first stick of dynamite, shooting the outhouse into the air. Boom! Off goes the second stick of dynamite, spreading poop all over the farm. Then, wham! The outhouse comes crashing back down atop the hole. Pa races to the outhouse, throws open the door, and asks, "Ma, are you all right?" As she pulls up her panties, she says, "Yeah, but I'm sure glad I didn't fart in the kitchen." A man and a woman were having a quiet, romantic dinner in a fine restaurant. They were gazing lovingly at each other and holding hands. While taking another order a few steps away, the waitress suddenly noticed the man slowly sliding down his chair and under the table. But the woman continued staring straight ahead. The waitress watched as the man slid completely out of sight under the table. Still, the woman didn't react. Thinking his behavior was a bit risque and might offend other diners, the waitress walked over to the table and gently said, "Pardon me, ma'am, but I think your husband just slid under the table." The woman calmly looked up and replied, "No, he didn't. My husband just walked in the door." A woman went to a pet shop and spotted a large, beautiful parrot with a sign on its cage that said $50. "Why so cheap?" she asked. The shop owner replied, "Well, this parrot used to live in a place where the conversations weren't exactly family-friendly. Sometimes it says things it probably shouldn't." The woman laughed and decided to buy it anyway. She brought it home, set up the cage in the living room, and waited to see what it would say. The parrot looked around and said, "New house, new lady." Amused, she thought, "That's not too bad." A little later, her 2 teenage daughters came home. The parrot looked at them and said, "New house, new lady, new girls." They all laughed. Then her husband, Keith, walked in from work. The parrot took one look at him and said, "Hi, Keith." An 85-year-old couple, married almost 60 years, was killed in a car accident. For the last decade, they'd both been in excellent health, thanks mostly to the wife's obsession with exercise and health food. When they arrived at the pearly gates, St. Peter greeted them and took them to their new heavenly home. It was a gorgeous mansion, huge kitchen, luxury bath, a jacuzzi, everything shining and perfect. They oohed and ahed, and the old man finally asked, "How much is all this going to cost?" St. Peter smiled. "It's free. This is heaven." Next, he showed them the backyard, right on the edge of a championship golf course. They could play every day, and each week the course changed to a new one, modeled after the greatest golf courses on earth. "How much are the green fees?" the old man asked. "Sir," St. Peter replied, "this is heaven. There are no green fees. Then he brought them to the clubhouse, where an enormous buffet stretched across the room, every cuisine imaginable, all beautifully prepared. "How much to eat?" the old man asked. "Everything is free," St. Peter said, starting to lose patience. "This is heaven." The old man looked around nervously. "Well, where's the low-fat, low-cholesterol section?" St. Peter laughed. "That's the best part. You can eat anything you want, as much as you want, and you'll never gain weight and never get sick." At that, the old man suddenly exploded. He threw his hat on the ground, stomped on it, and started shouting. His wife and St. Peter tried to calm him down. "What's wrong?" they asked. The old man pointed at his wife and yelled, "It's your fault! If it hadn't been for your blasted bran muffins, I could have been here 10 years ago." Jaimito arrives at school, and the teacher says, "Congratulations, Jaimito, congratulations." Jaimito asks the teacher, "Why are you congratulating me if today is not my birthday?" The teacher says, "It's because you are the first one to arrive at school." "Oh, it's because my uncle is a professional soccer player." "What does that have to do with you arriving early at school?" the teacher asks. "It's because he brings me here by kicking me." A farmer ordered a high-tech milking machine. Since the equipment arrived when his wife was out of town, he decided to test it on himself first. So he inserted his manhood into the equipment, turned on the switch, and everything else was automatic. Soon he realized that the equipment provided him with much more pleasure than his wife did. When the fun was over, though, he quickly realized that he couldn't remove the instrument from his member. He read the manual, but didn't find any useful information on how to disengage himself. He tried every button on the instrument, but still without success. Finally, he decided to call the supplier's customer service hotline with his mobile phone. Thank God for mobile phones. "Hello, I just bought a milking machine from your company. It works fantastically, but how do I remove it from the cow's udder?" "Don't worry," replied the customer service rep. "The machine will release automatically once it's collected 2 gallons. Have a nice day." Johnny was sitting in class, and he was behind a girl called Sally. The teacher asks the class, "Who created the earth?" And Johnny pokes Sally in the back with his sharpened pencil, and she jumps and says, "My God!" And the teacher says, "Yes, Sally, God did create the earth." Sally sits down. Then the teacher asks, "Where do you go after you live a good life?" And Johnny pokes Sally again, and she jumps up and says, "Heavens to Betsy." And the teacher says, "Yes, Sally, you will go to heaven after you live a good life." Sally sits down, knowing full well Johnny was poking her. Sally gave Johnny an angry glare, and she turned around. And then the teacher asks the class, "What did Eve say to Adam after their 77th child?" And Johnny pokes Sally harder this time in the back. And Sally jumps, turns around, and says, "If you stick that thing in me one more time, I swear I'm going to lose it."